Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. That's right, it's already Monday and it's time for you to get motivated with your girl, Shay Samuels. Thank you guys for the opportunity that you give me to spend this time with you. As I was preparing for this message, I kept hearing, you're blessed in the city, you're blessed in the hills, you're blessed when you come and when you go. I don't know who that message was for today, but I wanted to start it off with that because you are blessed. I don't know what it is about Mondays. Um, but Mondays seem to be the time frame after the weekend that everything just seems to go wrong. And that's why I do the messages on Monday, because I want to catch you at the start of your week, because everything can go wrong. But if you remember that you are blessed, if you keep that mindset, if you keep that thought process that you are blessed, anything that goes wrong, you know that God can turn that thing around. Late in the midnight hour, God will turn that thing around, so you are blessed. I don't know who that was for, but I pray that it bless a multitude of people just knowing that you are blessed. Amen. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the message today and bless you with this message. Amen. So the title of today's motivational video is it always seems impossible until it's done. All right, I'm going to say that again. It always seems impossible until it's done. What do I mean by that? We're going to come out of Genesis 17 today, talking about Abraham and Sarah. And then I'm going to make this practical point into your life. But keep that. It always seems impossible until it's done. In Genesis 17, it says, when Abraham was 99 years old, God showed up and said to him, I am the strong God. Live entirely before me. Live to the hilt. I'll make a covenant between us and I'll give you a huge family. For those of you who know the story, you know that, okay, I started with when Abraham was 99 years old, okay? I'm speaking to some people today in the natural and in the spiritual. Abraham was 99 years old, and God came up to him and said, listen, I'm gonna make a covenant with you. I'm gonna give you a huge family at 99. Amen. Let me go back and say this. It always seems impossible until it's done. Okay. Then God said to him, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Abram. It will be Abraham, meaning that I'm making you father of many nations. I'll make you a father of fathers. I'll make nations from you. Kings will issue from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you, a covenant that includes your descendants, a covenant that goes on and on and on, a covenant that commits me to your God, the God of your descendants. And I'm giving you your descendants this land where you're now just camping, this whole country of Canaan, to own forever. And I will be their God. And I read it pretty quickly, but go to Genesis 17 and read it. This is the Message version, but go to it and read it because there's a lot. And I'm going to try to capture all of this in 15 minutes. If not, I'll just do a part two. God continued to Abraham, and you will honor my covenant, you and your descendants, generation after generation. This is the covenant that you are to honor, the covenant that pulls in all your descendants. And so, and he starts to talking to his wife, let me just fast forward. So he goes to Sarah and he says to Sarah, God says he's going to give us kids. And Sarah goes, that's impossible. We're old. We're not going to have kids. And what did Sarah do? She took it in her own hands and said, listen, I want you to sleep with my husband because God made this promise to him. And so you have to bear the child. Amen. And so, you know the story, but go to Genesis 17 and read the story for yourself. This is the Message version, but I want to go back into the whole story that I just read and then break it down for you. Keep in mind, it's the message today is it always seems impossible until it's done. If you know the story, you know that Sarah ultimately delivered a child. But before that, she went to one of her maidservants and she said, have a child with him because God had promised him this. And so we take it into our own hands. And what happened was jealousy, deceit. There were so many things. Sarah wasn't even that person beforehand. But anyway, Sarah wasn't that person beforehand. But But what she did was she told her maidservant to have a child with her husband. Her husband ended up loving this child so much that it made her envious, made Sarah envious of the maidservant in the child. Amen. And she ultimately ended up sending the child away. But that's what happens when we take things into our own hand. Not the message, but I want to make sure that we understand that. We understand anytime God is doing something or God has made a covenant with us for some things, we do try to take it into our own hands and say, you know what, well, God has called me to do this, so what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start a church. And then we get upset when church is not the way that we thought it was gonna be. The members aren't showing up, or we're paying so much money for what we should be or what we feel we're called to do. Okay, God, you said that if you give me the vision, you're going to give me the provision. But listen to this. Abraham was 99 years old. He came to Abraham at 99 years old. Now, I'm not telling you to wait until you're 99 years old for God's promise, but in this Bible, it says when Abraham was 99 years old, God showed up and said to him, I am the strong God. Live entirely before me. I will make a covenant between us, and I will give you a huge family. It always seems impossible until it's done. Sarah, at her old age, was pregnant. And she bared a child, and she delivered a child in her old age. So let's talk natural. In the natural, there are some people out here right now who are desiring a child. And sometimes, and I know this is biblical. I know people are just kind of like, that's not even real. There's so many different resources out here for people, with their infertility to help with kids. And you hear those stories where people have been trying and trying for years, and it was when they stopped that they ended up having their child. But on the flip side of that, I have family members who have been looking to have children, and God has blessed them ultimately with children, not of their own, but God has blessed them with children that they have been able to be full seed to. And I mean children that may not even be in the position they're in life had they not been parented by my family members. And so there are so many different layers to what God will do when he promises you the yes and the amen. We just have to see it for what it's worth. Amen. As an artist, I used to hear people say all the time that your music's going to go out to nations. You are going to touch the nations. And right at an event that I was doing, an award show that I was awarded an award, and also ministered in song, as I was ministering, God showed me the nations. Their set. People from Puerto Rico, attendees from Africa, Tanzania, there were so many people who came from different nations to be a part of this event. And God showed me this is what it looks like. To the natural eye, when we talk about birth, we're thinking, okay, I need a passport. God's going to send me here, 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 and here. Also, I realized because my music touches the nations within radio, that's still touching the nations. But if I got so literal with what God was trying to birth out of me, I would feel discouraged. I would feel like I'm not meeting the qualifications, but I'm not meeting the expectation of what that promise was for me. And so when I start seeing it for what it's worth and understand that God, it always seems impossible until it's done. I can tell you, as a human being, I would have never thought my music would be playing on radios anywhere. I would have never thought my music would be one that would want to even be heard. I just love to sing. But when God started doing something different, when he impregnated me with this gift or this call, and I started operating in it, it always seems impossible until it's done. I was saying in the beginning of this ministry, I didn't know how I was even going to get out there. I used to see people and I would be like, how did this happen? Or why did this happen? But all I said was yes. There was a covenant made between Abraham and God, and Abraham had to say yes to that covenant in order for it to come to pass. Amen. That's in the natural. In the spiritual, we're believing for things as well, where God is coming to us and we're saying, okay, well, we're only 6 months into this ministry and God is not giving us what he promised us. We're only 2 years in the ministry. God's not giving us what he promised to us. It doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like. Go back to Sarah. Sarah was like, this is not real. I'm too old to bear a child. Just like a wife, to really think about like the bullet points of this thing. I'm not having kids at this age. Do you believe that God is going to give us kids? How are we going to take care of this thing? Are we financially going to be able to support it? I mean, we're old physically. Are we even going to be able to run around this child? But she thought, just like we do as women, too much into it. And here Abram says, I believe God. I believe God. I believe that if he said it, he's going to do it. For your ministry, I want you to remember that if God said it, he is going to do it. There's so many people in the Bible where God had promised certain things, or they didn't know what was going on or why they were going through certain trials and tribulations. It always seems impossible until it's done. Go back to another video that I did, Faith Without Work is Dead. You have to work your faith. So I'm going to ask you, where is your faith? What level of faith are you? People would say, do you have the size of the mustard seed faith? Do you have the mustard seed faith? So I'm going to ask you, do you have the mustard seed faith? It always seems impossible until it's done. Have you ever said to yourself, I will not be able to finish this school. It's too much for me. But you keep going, you keep trucking, you keep taking one step at a time. And before you know it, 4 years later, 5 years later, 6 years later, maybe 7 years later, you are going across the stage getting that degree. Come on. How many times have you said this business will never be able to open up because I don't have the finances, or because I just don't know where to begin? But then people start coming in your path and they start telling you what they do and you line up with what they do, but then it happens and you now have a business. I believe all these major businesses had to start off somewhere. I'm sure it started off with fear, but yeah, it always seems impossible until it happens. So what's your challenge today as we end this motivational segment? Just as Sarah did not believe, there's someone in your life that's believing with and for you, and God's going to show up and he's going to show out. There are things that you have been believing in, but I'm here to tell you it always seems impossible until it's done. So your challenge is to look back on the things that you thought were impossible. Take note of those things, journal them today, and make sure that you see not only that God has always been there by your side, but you have the strength to do what needs to be done. You have the power to do what needs to be done, and that you will recognize at the end of the day that it did get done and it is well. So what? You failed a couple of times. I was talking on an earlier show about prototypes. At times, we create things that we feel in the beginning we failed in. But what happens when you fail? You take that thing back and you start reworking it, and you know at that point what I need to change, what needs to be added, what has to be taken away, and that prototype becomes your finished product. Y'all, I'm here to tell you, it always seems impossible until it's done. Amen. So that means that God is not finished with whatever you're working on, that project, that book, that ministry, whatever. It will get done. Okay. It's done. You just have to keep working it. Amen. So that is the motivational moment in your challenge for today. I want you guys to just send a testimony and let me know that you worked that thing out. You know that it was impossible. it seemed impossible, but it got done. Tell me what it was that got done. So every end of the videos or audios, you know that I celebrate someone. And this week I am going to celebrate my mother. I'm celebrating my mother. My mother ultimately has been a blessing to me, not even knowing. She's been speaking some words into me. And yesterday she was talking about completing the process. And I'm listening to how God is developing in her, the conversations that we have, the topics that she comes up with. And I thank God every day for doing a good work in her and using me to do it. Amen. So I want to give a shout out to her and say that I love you, Mom. I celebrate you always. But today I wanted to take the time out when I'm doing these videos and the audio to say that I love you. I thank you for grooming me. I thank you for preparing me for life. I thank you for preparing me for the world. And I thank you for believing in my ministry so much that you're allowing God to change who you are as well. So that is your 15 minutes with Shay Samuels. I love you guys. And until next time, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at Shay Samuels so that you can get this video and other videos like it. Amen. I love you. I'm out.